Welcome to the March meeting of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Ottawa Centre. I'm Mick Wilson, I'm your host for tonight, and we have a fabulously international star-studded program for your delectation. Before we start, next slide please, Chris. Yes, we are recording this for posterity, so if you have any messages for future historians who will be reviewing this, you're welcome to put them up in the chat box. If you have more serious questions for the presenters, please put them in the Q&A. Don't bother raising your hands, it is disabled. And obviously any unsolicited links that are popping up anywhere, please just ignore them. So Chris, to the program. Following this introduction, there'll be a brief intermediate item before we introduce our special guests for tonight. This is Owen and his wife, Susan Murabana, who are coming to us live at 3:30 in the morning from Nairobi, Kenya, to describe their work on outreach, astronomical outreach in East Africa under the rubric of the Travelling Telescope. So it's a pretty special night, at least for me. That'll be followed by Al Scott returning with his 10-minute astronomy news. We'll take a bit of a break there. We go through a series of announcement members in the news. Dave will do his Ottawa skies for this month. Then we've got a presentation from Paul Klauninger highlighting the special features that are available to the observer in Orion in current months. We'll have our usual observation reports, Oscar's observing challenges, and close out with the announcements. And Chris, please. As a kickoff, I just think I'd need to bring it to everyone's notice. The global body, the International Astronomical Union and its affiliates, issued a statement on the 28th of February regarding the incursion into Ukraine. And while decrying it, they raised their concerns about the Ukrainians, both in the country and elsewhere, including here in Canada. They're particularly concerned about the state of Ukrainian science and astronomers working in and through that country. So, this is not a political organization, but when politics impacts on science and our pastime, I think it's worth paying attention to. And obviously those who wish to support efforts, Taras put out his request for optical equipment, binoculars and spotting scopes, and you know that the Ukrainian churches here in Ottawa are collecting material to send to the country. So we wish the best for our resolution of this routine. And with that, I would now like to pass over to Susan and Chu to tell us all about the Travelling Telescope. Take it away, kids.
Okay, at this point, I'll stop sharing the program and allow them to share their screen.
I'm waiting for the sun to disappear. I'm waiting for the day to turn to night. I'm waiting for the moon to cover up the sun and block out its light. It keeps going, there's more, but not now.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chu. Whoa. I'm just gonna share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Thank you for the very nice introduction, Mick. And it's nice to see you at 3 a.m. in the morning.
We just about see you through our bleary eyes.
Yeah. Chu and I had hoped to visit Canada for the International Planetarium Society meeting in 2020, but that couldn't happen because of COVID. But we're happy to be with you here today and to talk about what we love doing. So as mentioned, I'm Susie and Chu, and we're the founders of the Travelling Telescope. When we're doing our slides, I was trying to put the date and I wasn't sure whether I should put 5th or 4th of March, but I decided to go with the date of the meeting and the host. So there we go. So I'll start and then Chu will proceed at some point. The telescope has been around for more than 400 years, and yet so many people haven't had a chance to look through one, especially in where I come from, in emerging communities like Kenya. And that is the main reason why we started our company. It's a social enterprise called the Traveling Telescope. And basically what we do is we travel with our telescope or telescopes. We have one famous one that we normally move around with, but we've had few additions that complement our big 12-inch computerized telescope. We do it because we think it's going to spark curiosity and wonder and inspire the next generation of scientists, especially Kenyan and African scientists, who are not as many as the ones in the Western world. And we hope that that would help Kenya, develop from within and have sustainable development. So one of the things we do is education. And with that, we visit schools, taking our telescope and other tools around, visiting schools across Kenya and Tanzania, and teaching them about the night sky. I really like this picture taken by Chu. And this is a picture taken in the northern part of Kenya, in rural Kenya. These kids could not speak English or Kiswahili. Kiswahili is the national language here in Kenya. And they spoke a language we could not understand, but we all connected with the sky. And I like the way, this boy has this tool, but is also in awe of the sky. And where we were was in Turkana in northern Kenya, which has beautiful, dark, unpolluted skies. So this is our telescope. It's normally the showstopper of the night. We set it up in the middle and have everyone around it. And you can see even the cats over there could not resist having, a photo in the telescope. It's a 12-inch computerized telescope. And we pack it in boxes because sometimes you have to travel to some of the worst roads you can imagine. And we don't have telescope companies in Kenya or close to us. So we have to be very careful with our delicate equipment. We've also built a permanent planetarium out of bamboo. And I think Chu will talk more about the planetarium. Although I'm the president of African Planetarium Association, so he'll talk more about it because
I have to bow first.
Yeah, he has special reasons. So when we take our telescope around to mainly schools, we not only try to provide that educational complement of the learn in the classroom, because they do learn about astronomy in prep school and a little bit in high school. And so the schools see the need for that. But we also invite the local communities, sometimes elders. So this picture, which I really like, was taken in a part in Kenya, again, rural, but known for its tourism. It's called Amboseli, and it was a school there. These kids and the community live around or with wild animals, and they're very connected to the night sky as well. But while we're doing our show, we had about 500 kids around the telescope, and their grandparents and the elders. This is a Maasai community, and we invited the grandparents and the elders to talk about whatever they knew in the sky. Every single elder had something to say. The photo of the man with the cowboy hat is the chief of the community. And once we gave him the mic, it went around. This is before COVID, when we were able to have huge numbers without any worry.
Yeah, speaking on a battery-powered mic, which actually I think becomes really important at these nighttime events, because obviously we've got a bit of light here. This was just after the sun had just gone down. But like that microphone, when you've got 500 school kids, you think, well, how can you do 500 kids? But actually we managed to do it at the telescope, because it's obviously the one person's looking through the telescope, but we try to keep everyone else engaged and have like discussions and questions and answers and keep it sort of quite interactive. So I think that that quite works quite well.
So in addition to taking our telescope around, in the last few years, we've been partners with the Airbus Foundation. Airbus is an aircraft manufacturing company, but they also are involved in the space industry. They build rockets and satellites. And they designed a program where we would get kids to, you know, do robotics and learn more about the space industry and try to be the little engineers. It was a really nice program. We traveled across Kenya to different schools and reached quite a number of kids. It was really nice to see the satisfaction, like one of this girl, when they completed their missions, because they had different missions. Some of the schools we went to, the students had never used computers. The schools didn't even have sanitation blocks, but they managed to, you know, learn with the 3-4 hour period we had with them. And it was just so much inspiring even for us to see the reactions of these kids. And this also added the conversation of what we try to tell kids, because mostly they think of the space industry or astronomy as just looking up at the stars, but there's so many people and there's so many careers in the space industry, and there is a huge space industry waiting for them. So not just as an astronomer, but an engineer. And we've had kids who told us before a session that they'd like to be an engineer, and afterwards, after the session, say they'd like to build rockets. So just, you know, also just giving them opportunities of what's out there and what they could become. And in addition to that, Kenya now has a space agency. It's quite new. And so we feel, you know, that we can direct our kids to be part of that industry, because every kid in Kenya who's interested in space knows about NASA. And so, yeah, we always tell them, yeah, you can work for Kenya Space Agency. Yeah,
definitely. It's also like the engineering side of it. For me, I mean, I'm really interested in telescopes, and we're actually looking at rebuilding one that we bought here that was made sort of not quite as it could have been. So that kind of problem-solving approach with engineering, I think, is really important to nurture.
Yes.
So we try and do a bit of that as well. And even with the planetarium, which we'll maybe come back to, is a sort of a bit of an approach on bamboo engineering.
Yes. So as I've said, we've visited hundreds and hundreds of schools across Kenya and Tanzania. We've directly reached hundreds of thousands of students across East Africa, and we've been featured on various international and local media outlets, including CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, even some Canadian media outlets. One was Reader's Digest, which was very interesting, very recent as well. And we've talked about the education angle, but we also do astrotourism, promoting Kenya as a tourism site for the stars. So Kenya and most countries in the continent depend on tourism as the source of national income. But we're fortunate to live in a country where we're right at the equator, and that means that we get to see all of the sky.
Both hemispheres.
And we are able to entertain tourists through that. And that's what we hope would be, you know, the business model where we can generate income from the astrotourism project, and that feeds into the education project, because we do not charge most of the schools we visit unless they're private or international schools. And then we're also the recipients of the Europlanet Prize for Public Engagement and Planetary Science for 2020. That was such a special time for us, because it was a difficult time and we're trying to figure out what next, because we couldn't reach people during COVID. We tried to do online programs. One was a cosmic quiz, which was really fun. we had people from all over the country, the world joining once week, every Saturday.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
It
For,
was
for a while, yeah.
When it was like really during COVID times and everyone was at home, and we had, you know, astronomers from South Africa, for example, who worked at the South African Large Telescope, and kids, 10-year-old, 9-year-olds from India competing to buzz in an answer and give the correct answer. And that was really fun. But we got, I think, really exhausted in just organizing the online aspect, and we missed the physical interaction with people. We even tried putting the moon through Zoom.
Well, and there was an eclipse, which that song I just sillily played at the beginning. We sort of wrote a song. We've got a little music video about that, which our kids sort of, you know, they kind of play and sing on it. So, and we've got about three or four music videos which you can go and check out. We should probably provide a link at some point on our website. But yeah, that kind of was another thing that we sort of wanted to do, engagement, where, well, there was obviously an eclipse is always a good time to do that. And so we thought we'd write a song about it.
Yeah, so there was an annular eclipse across Africa, and we were trying to engage people again during the height of COVID and couldn't, you know, physically meet. So we did have some calls and everything, but we also had songs that we produced with our kids and had to bribe them to show, to do the songs. And we actually won an award for those songs.
Yeah, we'll put that one there.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think the Europlanet Award was a big thing for us, because that meant that some people appreciated what we were doing and we felt confident to proceed. And there's a little money attached to it, which meant we could continue doing what we wanted to do. Then we are also the youth partners of Airbus Foundation.
Yep, here we are doing our thing again. This was actually during a tourism summit that's held, I think, every year in Kenya. Kenya's got, like, you probably all know about the animals, but you might not know, although you probably could guess, that a lot of the parks where these animals and the wilderness is underneath some of the darkest skies that I think you can experience comfortably. I've been to one or two like of those high altitude observatories, and they're just freezing. And yes, the sky's good, but you're just not comfortable. So anyway, I think it's probably the best place you can do it from, for me anyway. You can do stargazing in your t-shirt, and there's lions and elephants around, which adds a little bit of you know, excitement. But it's also that at the equator, you've got the ecliptic passes right over your head. So I don't think you can get better views of Saturn and Jupiter, and even the moon. You know, it's wonderful. And at the moment, we actually just come from a stargazing session we did tonight in a school, not a tourism thing, but Orion straight above. So we were able to see the Orion Nebula from the city quite well in that, even though it's, you know, there's no moon.
I don't know if Chu has mentioned that the man looking through the telescope is a minister for tourism.
Oh, yeah.
And he took a selfie at the telescope. So obviously the telescope attracts so much attention. So in addition, we talked about our AstroTourism. We visit lodges and partner with them to provide stargazing session, what we call a star safari. So we talk about the lion in the sky, like the lion they would try and see during the safari, and, you know, just have very good conversations as they look through the telescope. And it's been such an interesting, fun time to do this in different lodges.
And just to quickly add, this is at the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro, which was particularly good. There was no moon, of course, at this point. And then this is the sort of one of the outer spiral arms of the Milky Way, not far away from the large and small Magellanic Clouds, which also in a different, I think actually, if we move ourselves, you might be able to see one on the top right. There we go. So that's the large Magellanic Cloud that's on the right there. And it turns out that the Messier have a story about that, which is that when that starts to appear is a few weeks or so until the short rains come. So there's cultural knowledge out there that is really nice for us to kind of gather and share with the rest of the world.
Yeah, so we take as many photos as we can. Obviously, The moon looks great, one of the wild things in the sky. We do have our big five when you go for a safari, which is a leopard, rhino, buffalo, lion, and
leopard, lion, buffalo,
elephant,
rhino.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
But we also have a big five in the sky. The moon is one of them, Saturn, Jupiter.
Don't tell anyone, but it changes every time we do a thing. As long as there's just 5 things we talk about. No.
Yeah, so it's a way to, bring in the atmosphere at Saturn through our telescope. Again, more photos of the night sky. I think this was taken in Nairobi, in Kenya. And then really important for us to invite the local communities when we go to these places, because they're very connected to the night sky. They sometimes have traditional stories, and they're also very connected with nature. So, for example, this is a guide in one of the lodges in northern Kenya, and elephants at the background. It's such a nice, powerful photo.
It is a double image before you start questioning it, yes, but that they were taken at the same sort of period,
Right.
same period, yeah.
It's powerful because you see elephants. I think for me, they're my favorite animals, but it's a reminder that we can't have elephants or tomatoes without a planet, and we can't have a planet without a star. So looking up reminds us of the uniqueness and how privileged we are to be living on this planet. We were also fortunate last year to have Madonna, the pop star, as one of our clients. Without us knowing, it was a difficult journey getting there. And we
just making sure which Madonna you were talking about. The pop star Madonna, yeah.
And it was, I was starstruck the whole time. I didn't open my mouth. I was, constantly thinking about and looking at her reactions and her expressions, and just remembering that we've had some of the poorest kids in Kenya look through the telescope and have a similar reaction to, the smallest percentage of richest people like her. And just seeing how that could influence a journey of a young kid, her participation, or someone who's privileged to come and enjoy tourism trip with a family or alone in Kenya. That trip could have an impact on a child in their education from their community. That was quite powerful. Going to talk about the planetarium.
Yeah, well, this is our planetarium. It's basically a massive tent which has got curtains on the inside and sort of a roller blind type of thing up the top, so that we can kind of get air going. We redesigned it because we just finished it, and it was much more of a round, it just looked like a normal dome, about 3 months before COVID came along. And so once that happened, we had to shut down because there were no public gatherings, no school visits, no tourism. So everything just went wrong for us. So we were just at home and, okay, well, let's see if we can open up our dome. And so we made it much more of an airflow design. So you see we've opened up the sides, which looks like a skirt or a spaceship, depending on how you view it. And then the top as well. So we cut the top off basically of the fabric and then stuck a new bamboo roof on it. So everything is made of bamboo. We also tried to use, tried to use no metal at all. So all the connectors are actually made with bamboo, came up with this way of joining bamboo and rope. So the whole thing is, you could just untie it, which is also important because we're only in a rented place. We didn't want to make this, big structure without being able to take it to our next place. Hopefully we'll stay here because it's great, but we'll see.
So the cost of building a planetarium, especially a fixed one, is quite expensive. And through, community trying to get solutions, I think we moved to a place where those bamboo and Chu had decided he wanted to build a dome out of bamboo. But a design like this can be shared across with communities that want to have planetaria and might not have the resources to build one. So
just one other thing is that the bamboo that we built that from is just off to the right of the picture. You can't see it there, but it's all come from our garden. So I sort of learned how to treat it, and hopefully it'll last for a while. We'll see.
so also, yeah, so one of the things, it's an affordable way to build planetariums, domes, but also it's a way for us to practice what we preach, try and have sustainable models.
Yeah, we always talk about the Earth and the stewardship that astronomy teaches us about, how we've only got this one place where we can survive at the moment.
So this is inside the planetarium, and we have beanbags, we have pallets, and guests come and sit and have a wonderful time looking up and learning about the sky.
Just also the central thing obviously is a protection for the projection system, which is inside. So we sort of have this bamboo turret type thing as well. That's all bamboo there too.
And then we've also been invited previously to work with United Nations Environment Assembly as a way to encourage the conversation and thoughts of protecting our planets with the environment. So this is an assembly where heads of states and ministers for environment all over the world are invited to the United Nations in Nairobi, United Nations Environment Program in Nairobi, every so often. The one this year just ended this week. We were not invited for that one. And it was the first hybrid, mostly physical after COVID. But when we're invited to participate with this meeting, we thought of trying to get astronauts from the ISS to send a message. That was a big shot. We didn't manage to do that. But we're able to get the United Nations and the communities to invite 2 astronauts and experts from Airbus. So the man, that's me in the colorful African outfit, but the man next to me is the first Indian astronaut, and the lady next to him is the first African-American astronaut. You probably know them, Dr. May Jamison and Rakesh Sharma. And then we have Fabio, who is an expert space engineer from Airbus, who
particularly satellites.
In satellites, who is trying to reach communities, especially farmers, so that they can use the data from satellites to predict or know what to do with their crops or when to plant. And it was such an interesting session with them for a whole week, listening to how all of them and their careers, how it was coming back from space and the projects they're involved with. And it was also interesting to see how they presented to heads of states and the impact we thought it had at that time.
It's also quite a nice thing to talk about with local kids about how the space industry can actually benefit people on the ground. We always talk about mobile phones and sort of GPS, which is sometimes relevant. But when you say that you can predict when to plant crops, or if there's going to be a storm, or even the locust plague that happened last year, was all being monitored from space, as are the flotsam or whatever it's called on Lake Victoria. So there's lots of applications for direct things, as well as solar panels and water purification.
So this is the main reason why we do what we do, inspiring young kids, giving them a chance to look through the telescope, and hopefully leaving them with that curiosity to try and explore more. As you said, we also have a portable planetarium that we take around, and during our trips, once one of the kids said he now believes in science, having been inside the planetarium. Just the power of these tools. They're not tools that are easily accessible, especially in Kenya. We don't have a fixed science center, for example. So I think the mobile activities we do are contributing in a small way to, giving our young and future generation of scientists interest and sparking their curiosity, becoming scientists.
That's the moon in his eye, by the way.
We're coming to the end of our presentation. We strongly believe that every child should at least once in their lifetime have a chance to look through the telescope and visit a planetarium. This is not very easy for us, but you can make this happen by visiting our website and becoming part of our community. We're on social media on Facebook as the Traveling Telescope, Instagram and Twitter, and we'll be happy to take questions if you have any.
Thank you so flippin' much. You two are fabulous. I had minimal expectations about what to expect here, and you far exceeded them, even though Chu had to sing. So thank you both very much. No, not again. Look, I'm going to throw the floor open for questions in a moment, but I've got 2 points that I like to make. And one is, hey, as you know, when I was in Kenya, I worked at the UN Environment Program. One of my sideline activities for a number of years there was to try and get connection between the Environment Program and the International Dark Sky Association. And I had less than spectacular success. I think I was just too early in the evolution of awareness of things like light pollution abatement and energy wastage and so on. And so I'm just asking if you two ever get your foot inside that door again, I would be very interested to try and help coordinate. And one of our members here in Ottawa is an eminence gris in the field of light pollution abatement. And I'm sure that, Rob, if you're listening, this might tweak some interest from you as well. So that's the end of my rant. I do have a question. I always believe in asking the first question at these things, and I'm doing it now. How close is the next nearest planetarium to yours?
Ooh. Oh, close. So there's the fixed and portable. So portable, there's one. There are a few portable planetariums in Kenya. So not just ours.
No. I'm talking about fixed.
Fixed. The closest, I think.
Probably have to get the ruler out, but I reckon Ghana.
Ghana, yeah.
Which is all the way over in West Africa. South Africa, probably next. I don't know. Is there another one?
So yeah, there are a few in there's one in Nigeria. Most of the planetariums across are built by the states, but the one in Ghana is built by an older couple who've done a fantastic job building the planetarium. It's been there for I think 10 years now, and they're trying to get another one built in a university. And then even in South Africa, there are few,
and there's a few in North Africa as well. There's I think Egypt.
Yeah, and then in Nigeria.
But not many around here, that's for sure.
But there's interest because of our association, APA, African Planetarium Association. We're constantly getting, emails that Ethiopia would like to have a permanent planetarium and all. And I think the problem is normally the cost, because it's quite an expense to build, and get the equipment. So we're really trying to figure out ways. We have a sub committee that's trying to work on an affordable planetarium system for the continent.
Okay, and we do have our first question from someone other than me. This is from Brian McCulloch asking, what sort of projector are you using?
It's it's a laser phosphor projector, and it's I think almost 8,000 lumens, and it's got a fisheye lens. So there's that's the heart of the system, really. It's like that's and I think the dome that we made, which is 10 meters, just shy of 10 meters, is as big as that particular projector can go. It looks great, it really does. But and 10 meters is a great sized dome. We regularly get recently we've been getting full houses, which is quite nice.
Come on, there's got to be some more questions out there. fascinating topic like this?
It's Dave
Or
here.
do we let these two get to bed?
It's Dave here. I can't post a question because I'm on the panel. I see on your website that you've got a portable planetarium that's also part of your arsenal as well.
Yes.
Like a 30-meter dome.
Yes, we do. We have
Not 30 meters. Does it say 30 meter on the website? I hope
but-
not.
Sorry, 8-meter. Sorry,
Ah.
that's better.
I was
You'd like to have a
I want
30-meter.
one of those. That would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we have a portable planetarium as well, and we've even yesterday.
Well, we've just come back. Actually, I don't. That's still tonight, really, isn't it? We've just come back from doing a series of shows with the telescope and planetarium.
And it's nice because there's so many schools, especially that can't come to us because we don't have a school bus, or but we take it to a school and we're able to reach, half day. If you're there for half a day, 200 kids, and if you're there for a full day, 400. And previously, before COVID, we had 100 kids.
Yeah, 100
squeezed
kids
in a session.
eight shows with 100 kids in each one, and so in a day we did, pretty much 1,000, almost.
Yeah.
1,000.
So teachers are happy to, miss their science lesson and bring the kids to us for a lesson. We set it up in the school and just have the kids come in. And as you say, we do charge private and international schools a minimal fee that keeps us going, but also it's also able to support our trips to the public schools. So the public schools in Kenya is where school kids don't pay school fees, have a majority of kids, and that's where we're able to visit schools in the city, especially informal sectors, and also in rural parts of Kenya. So we've taken our planetarium to all these places. And I think if you go to our website, you might be able to see a few pictures of the planetarium.
Yeah, and
sorry.
I'll just make the point there that I know Susie and Chu precisely because they came to my daughter's school when she was in grade 3, and didn't have the planetarium at that stage, but yeah, that's what kicked off our relationship, and I'm glad to hear that it's just growing from strength to strength. Okay, the questions are pouring in. Let's go. What about lions? Asked Doug Fleming. I'm nervous when I hear coyotes out here at night.
We actually
he doesn't even mention wolves.
There have been a few close calls, I got to say. So that picture that we've got with the elephants in the background and the Maasai guy at the telescope, that place is in one of these beautiful tourism destination. We bring the telescope, so it becomes an astro-tourism destination. It's beautiful. We were there a week ago as well. There was a time there where I was just busy looking at the moon and the telescope, and the guy who owns the place is like, don't make any sudden moves, but we've been circled by this lion and a lioness, and they were just there, and I don't know, 15, 12 maybe meters away from us. So suddenly I was like, okay, don't know what to do now. I'm going to do anything because that might be the wrong thing to do. So yeah, there's been a thing. And there's another time when a hyena chased some gazelle right past us as well. That was quite, yeah. So we have some close calls.
Yeah, but it's really fun. It's just you're there with the telescope in the sky and there's a lion there. Like, how else would you tell the story? It's just an amazing experience. But we, as you said, we also go to schools. So when we partner with these lodges, we try to get them to give us access to schools. Yeah, these lodges that are, beautiful and have all the stories, but the schools are, very forgotten, especially by the government. And some of these kids have to walk back home from school. They live with these wild animals. So whenever we do our sessions, you have to be aware to try and, finish early so that sessions in schools, so that the kids can go home safely. But it's just interesting how the communities are able to live and know what to do when they meet the wild animals. It's just very connected with nature. It's
the wild, and it's the wild sky, and it's that kind of combination of those those two things. It's why the skies are so good as well. It's because you're far from the light pollution of our cities.
And still on the topic of wildlife, Doug O'Brien states that when we hold events here in Canada, we're deluged by insects at sunset. How is it in Africa? Doug thinks Africa is the one place, but how is it in Kenya?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a magnet for mosquitoes, so I always have to have a bottle of lotion around. They're amazingly susceptible to the white lights, which obviously head torches, well, the ones we use always got white and a red. So as long as you switch to red, not so bad for the mozzies.
Yeah.
Well, they're not just the mozzies, the flies that are attracted to the light.
But also these cute fireflies that.
Oh, those are beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, glowing. Yeah, fireflies, glow in the dark things. Yeah, which, yeah.
Okay, and so one more question from Sharon Idell on a different topic. Do you see the same group of children each year, or are they different each time? I guess how many return visits do you have? So
it depends. We have some of the visits are one-off, but we're starting to have repeat visits. Some of the schools have invited us. When we were doing the program with Airbus, the robotic program, we visited schools physically, but when COVID happened, we had to stop and we started running a virtual 3D modeling program using Tinkercad. And that gave us an opportunity to work with some schools in remote areas that have connectivity, and we had a continuous program with them. So every week we meet with them. And we also have other programs. We have access to the National Schools Observatory, which is by Liverpool University. So they have a big telescope and schools take part in that. So we've just done an app with them. And we've just completed building a moon app called Moonshot. And it has an interactive part to it. So we'll be inviting school kids to test it. So most of this will be students we've worked with before. So not all kids or not all schools we visit is repeat, but quite a number of them, we do have repeat visits. We are a very small team now, we're only 3 of us. So it makes it difficult for us to have, small clubs. But the Kenya Space Agency is planning to set up clubs in school. And with their support, it will be easier for us to support them and to see that there's a continuous program in the schools we visit. So just working with other organizations to see that we're able to reach and have a sustainable program in schools. We've also been getting repeat visits in the planetarium, a few, and we're now started doing a monthly stargazing, like a star party, effectively every month, just out of town. In fact, Mick, the place where we did the thing where you came along, Apollos, I don't know if you remember that place. About probably 500 meters from there, but like access through a completely different side. So along Champagne Ridge, what they call Champagne Ridge. So there's a beautiful campsite there, and we've started to do a monthly thing there, and we're getting people coming back for that one actually, because they sort of start to realize that different things are visible at different times, which is a win for us. So just I don't know if we have a minute, not a response to a question, but Chu and I met during total solar eclipse that I brought. No, that was in Kenya in 2013. And I had organized a trip down to a really remote part of Kenya where the totality was going to be the perfect totality. And she joined in, and that's how we met. But we've both been involved in astronomy outreach. Myself in Kenya, mainly in schools, and Chu in the UK. I had never looked through a telescope until I was in my 20s. And the first time I looked through one, I was like, I want to share this with as many kids as possible. And I think Chu had a similar. Yep. It's like, why did I never get to do this at school? This should be, or at least have a night of being taught what the sky is, what stars are, what planets are, a few constellations, and how the sky moves. It's like, that's what we try to do now for as many kids as we can. So we know there's so many possibilities. I mean, working with the United Nations, for example, but also we have a group of Swedish students who have the biggest Swedish association, astronomy association, and they want to come to Kenya to experience, safari, but also to volunteer in a school. So we're trying to curate a program with them for them to come. So we know there are many opportunities, and we're just so fortunate to have met and begun the traveling telescope, and being able to access schools the way we do and communities.
Yeah.
Okay, there is one. I think this will be the last question. Otherwise, it's going to be sunrise there, and so much for astronomy. This is from Michael Wolfson asking whether you use a computer to run the planetarium, and if so, what sort of programs are most popular? I think those are two separate. Yes. No. Okay. Yes.
Well, from the beginning, we have wanted to upgrade our software. We are still using Stellarium. We've got the highest sort of resolution that we can get with that. But then we also play these films, which there are lots of available out there, and we sometimes like chop and change. So we kind of use some of the visualizations that films have done, because actually they've used the good software. So and they're happy for us to do that. We have checked. So it's a bit of a mixture of things that we use, but yeah, we kind of there's always a bit of software we've got our eye on, and one day we shall upgrade.
Well, sorry, what was the first part of the question?
Whether you use a computer to drive the planetarium, and if so, what sort of programs?
Yeah,
I think we've got. Look, yes. You two, we could probably keep going like this for another hour, but you need your beauty sleep. On behalf of everyone here, I'd like to thank you both hugely, muchly, thank you-ishly for doing this and for doing it so damn well. And I am sure that everyone out there in television land will show their appreciation by going to travellingtelescope.uk and hitting the donate button repeatedly and often.
That'd be lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us to be with you.
Oh, it won't be the last time, believe me. If I've got anything to do with it. Yeah, thanks very much, guys. And good morning, good night from us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, where are we up to? Hi there, Chris.
Yes, you're ready to go on the next slide?
I think it's probably good if we go to the break now. I think
okay. I can
timing is appropriate there. Can we?
How about that?
There you go. Okay. And while you're exercising your biological functions, the question to ponder this month is that what is the astronomical significance of bread and butter? 5 minutes. See you later. Okay. Is everybody back and awake? Left you with the question, what is the astronomical significance of bread and butter? And I'm just checking the chats and the Q&A. No one has suggested an answer.
I suggest you should look, and Mick, you'll see that someone has answered it perfectly, but they did not broadcast it to the full audience.
That is there. Thank you for pointing that out, Chris. So Larry Penn states that Nicholas Copernicus was the first to put butter to bread and proposed that planets revolve around the sun. I'll give you an elephant stamp and a gold star for that one, Larry. Indeed, Nicholas Copernicus supposedly invented the application of bread to butter. This is not a historical fact, but it is a good story. Okay, Chris, where are we up to in the agenda, please?
How about we go back to the slide?
Yep. Okay, so this is the monthly bribe to subscribe. Why would you join the Royal Astronomical Society? Why would you pay the fees that are indicated there for regular family and youth membership? And what would you expect to gain in return for joining? In normal times, you have access to a number of facilities. This includes the loan library and the publication library at the Canadian Air and Space Museum. Unfortunately, we are COVIDed out of there until further notice. We have the Fred Lossing Observatory as a members-only facility that's also available. Next one, Chris. There are numerous publications, Sky News bi-monthly magazine, the Journal of the Royal Astronomical Society's quarterly, the fabulous and world-famous Observer's Handbook, and Ottawa Centre's own monthly Astronotes, full of interesting gossip and tidbits. Next one. From my perspective, the premier benefit of joining RASC and RASC Ottawa in particular are the people and the expertise, the experience that they bring. As we saw tonight, the quality of the presentations that you can be able to enjoy, the people to whom you can go with questions, get advice, and straight up hand holding is probably the wrong word, but support in your endeavors in astronomy. And so with that, please encourage everyone in your scope to join the RASC. We have, what is that? 9 new members in the course of February coming into March. Welcome all. I hope you're all online tonight. And we've had 20 new members through January and February, which is not a bad start for the year. Next one, Chris. I will now hand off to Dr. Al Scott, who's returned to us to present his 10-minute astronomy news. Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Mick, and it's a pleasure to be back. I've been off in COVID land for some time. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe. So my first item of news is regarding the Hoyle carbon formation rate. Physicists have reproduced how stars make carbon through a fleeting partnership of helium atoms known as the Hoyle state in 2 separate experimental laboratory measurements. They found that carbon, the building block of life, is produced 34% faster than previously thought. Now, this is an amazing story. If any of you know the story of the Hoyle level in carbon, nuclear physicists did not know that this level of the carbon nucleus is a resonance level in the carbon nucleus. They didn't know it existed. And in fact, they didn't know how carbon could be produced in stars, in fusion reactions. Effectively, without this level, fusion ends around beryllium, you don't get heavier elements being formed. And so Fred Hoyle posited that there must be an excited resonance in the carbon nucleus if we were to exist. So this is effectively the first prediction of the anthropic principle, which states that we are here and we've come about by natural processes. This is one of the links in the chain that must exist for us to have come about from stardust, as it were. So Hoyle said there must be a level here, and lo and behold, it was discovered, and nuclear physicists were able to measure how fast carbon is formed. And this was back in 1953, and they named this state after Hoyle. And this, in turn, paves the way for further fusion reactors for heavier elements beyond carbon, oxygen all the way to iron, which are formed in heavy stars while they're fusing elements and creating energy. And it's a very unstable state in the carbon nucleus, for every 2,500 of these highly excited nuclei that are produced, only one can emit the energy before it breaks apart and become a stable carbon atom. So it's a very rare process. And so the physicists, what they did was they bombarded carbon foil with protons and measured the decay rate and the emission rate of the particles they need to emit an electron-positron pair to excite or to release all the energy and become a stable nucleus before it breaks apart. And so there was two groups of physicists measuring different breakdowns or relaxations of this state. And comparing their measurements, they found that it was actually 36%, it was formed 36% faster than the original published measurement back in 1976, which everyone had been accepting as gospel up till now. And all the production rates of carbonaceous dust in space were based on. So this new measurement is going to affect our understanding of how stars change over time, how they produce elements heavier than carbon, how we measure the age of stars, and how long they'll last, and how often we expect to see supernova explosions, and even whether they leave behind neutron stars or black holes. So an amazing bit of work in the laboratory that has profound implications for our understanding of space and existence as we know it. So I thought that was an interesting item. Go to the next one, please, Chris. So this is a cool one as well. In 2017, astronomers predicted an imminent stellar merger in the constellation of Cygnus, which would result in a red nova like the one pictured here in the picture. And they basically monitored an eclipsing contact binary, so two stars orbiting about each other with a period of 11 hours. So really fast, these two stars are cycling about each other. And they collected data from 2007 to 2013. And then they said, okay, well, I wonder how fast the period is changing. So they went back and looked for archived observations of this eclipsing binary, and they found data from 1999. And they were really surprised that the period was significantly changing, so much so that they predicted that these two stars would fuse and have a kilonova here, a red nova, in the year 2022, this year. And this was the first actual prediction of one of these things ever. However, another group uncovered other previously unknown observations from 2003, which were inconsistent with the collapsing pattern. So what gives? Well, they went back and looked at the historical observations, the people that found the data from 2003, and they realized that there was a transcription error from the data to the paper, which was a 12-hour error. And actually, if it was transcribed properly, they would have not predicted anything was going to change for quite some time. So this new observation shows that it's relatively stable, nothing to worry about, Cygnus is safe. And this is a good example of self-correcting science predictions. Let's go to the next one, please. What astronomy news update is complete without visiting the James Webb Space Telescope, which is functioning at the L2 point and is being cooled down passively with its nice solar shields that you see here, and aligning all of the 18 sub-elements in the telescope. Next slide, please. So this is a really cool device. This is a picture of the primary taken by one of its instruments, which is out of focus for looking at stars, but it's focused on the primary mission. The journey to this point started over 25 years ago with the dream of a next generation space telescope to follow up on Hubble. And the cost is about $10.8 billion in present day dollars. Over the next 6 months, the primary mirror segments are going to be co-aligned to within a few tens of nanometers using actuators, very fine piezoelectric actuators, to make a single coherent telescope mirror. Next slide, please. Canada contributed the fine guidance sensor on the James Webb Space Telescope and the near-infrared imager and slitless spectrograph at a cost of roughly 200 million Canadian dollars. The primary investigator is Professor René Doyon of Université de Montréal, but the instruments were built here in Ottawa by Comdev, now Honeywell, and tested at the David Florida labs here in Ottawa. And they were actually delivered to NASA roughly a decade ago. This is how long this thing has been testing to make sure that it works before they fire it 2 million kilometers away. Obviously, it's difficult to send the repairman. Next slide, please. This is one way they worked out how to align all of these things. Ball developed a 1/6 scale model of the JWST optics. So each segment of the JWST mirrors is a 1.5 meter telescope on its own. These are 1/6 scale, and they use these to determine how we can line these things up to tens of nanometers when they're 2 million kilometers away. And they demonstrated all the procedures, and we're going through them now, led from the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore. Next slide, please. This is the original first light image from the telescope, and you can see these are copies of the same star. Each copy of this star, and they found a star that was relatively isolated so they could do this. Each copy of this star is from one of the 18 telescopes which make up the mirror. So that what they have to do is they have to tilt all of these things and figure out which image is from which mirror so that they can line them all up. Next slide, please. So here they've identified which segment each of the images comes from. And there were two folding wings that folded in, and they can see which, you can see they're all kind of co-aligned. So they identified them all, and then they put them into a regular grid. Next slide, please. So they tilted all the segments, and now they have them in this regular grid, and now they can focus each of the telescopes independently and play with them all. So after being powered on January 28th and undergoing successful aliveness and functional tests, the Canadian Fine Guidance Sensor has now successfully performed its guiding operations, and now all of the observations, they can actually pick out one of these images and send it to the guider and stabilize the telescope. So the telescope has moving wheels in it which stabilize it, and this causes some vibrations, and it's going to be wobbling about through thermal effects. So the fine guider takes an image of one of these stars 16 times a second and sends updates to a fine steering mirror about 3 times a second to keep these things very stable. And the sort of precision we're talking about would be to track someone's eye motion from 500 kilometers away. That's the sort of precision that this is providing, so that you can get very sharp images of the first galaxies. And on February 13th, the fine guidance sensor turned on and was successfully operating and stabilizing these images. We've also calibrated the filter wheel in the nearest scientific imager, which has a bunch of different prisms and gratings and cool things for looking at atmospheres of planets and searching for signs of life. Next slide, please. So this is a GIF that shows the focusing of each of the individual elements. They actually began by defocusing the segment images by moving the secondary mirror slightly. So first you need to align the secondary mirror at the right position, and then individually move all of the individual mirrors. And they use a mathematical analysis called phase retrieval to these defocus images to determine the precise positioning errors of each of the segments. However, they're still not working as a single mirror. So go to the next one, please. So here they've tilted all of the segments so that they're lined up on the same spot now, and they're all co-aligned. And this is basically stacking the images of 18 independent telescopes, but they're still not in phase. There's interference between them. They're not lined up to a single wavelength. So some of them are countering the brightness from others. So this isn't as bright as this star image will get once they're all in phase to a fraction of a wavelength, and they're all interfering coherently rather than fighting against each other. So how do they do that next step? We'll go to the next slide. So this is a simulation, and they use the near cam with a prism which spreads the light, and they mask off pairs of sub-telescopes and measure the interference between the pairs. And this gives them something like this barber pole image. And this is called coarse phasing. And what they do is then they can tell from this pattern by moving the two relative to each other, they get the lines to line up vertically, and then they're in phase. So they can pair up each pair of optics and minimize the offsets between them. And then they go around through all the pairs, and once they're all, and they have to do this iteratively. And this is why it takes months to do this, because they have to go through all of the pairs and do this 2 million kilometers away, look at the results and provide some fine offsets. So this spectrum, when it's properly lined up, will tell them that the two segments are coherent. They're in phase. Basically, it's less than a wavelength of light apart. And go to the next one. And this is the final step called fine phasing, where they offset the segments by -8 wavelength, -4, +4, and +8, and you get this interesting diffraction pattern. And they can analyze this and minimize the defocus of each segment so that the whole thing is in focus. And then go to the last slide. Once they've done that, the whole thing will be in focus for one field point. That camera that they're looking at is, but this is a huge field of view that the JWST has. There's different instruments, and each instrument is taking a different portion of the telescope field and looking at it. You can see Canada has the whole bottom half in our instruments, the fine guidance sensor and the nearest instrument. For our $200 million contribution and a $10.8 billion mission, we basically eat up half the field of view with our instruments, which is pretty darn cool. So after the fine phasing, they have to now repeat this process for all of the field points so that all the instruments are in focus. You don't have tilt to your wavefront effectively, or to your focal plane. And they'll probably go through this iteratively a few times. There's several, 7 steps altogether to do this. So after roughly 3 months of aligning, they'll be ready to start commissioning the science instruments. And then you're going to start getting first light instruments from all of these things, looking at their cool targets of interest and doing some real science. So I'm really looking forward to this. This is orders of magnitude beyond anything that we've got, and it's working spectacularly, knock on wood. I'm really looking forward to the results, and I hope for good things. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Al. I've got 2 points here, by the way. Your first slide, you somehow forgot to note that image, and I guess the work done on the Hoyle carbon cycle took place at the Australian National University. I hope you are feeling very remiss about that. Secondly, to anyone out there who's feeling motivated, I've never understood why Fred Hoyle did not get the Nobel Prize for that piece of work. I know the answer. He was an iconoclast. And if anyone is motivated to research Hoyle's life, his work, and particularly this prediction that Al's been discussing tonight, I think that would make for a fascinating presentation. So thanks, Al. I don't see any questions.
I should mention, Australia was one of the 2 sites that did this measurement. Australia did a measurement, and Oslo also did a measurement.
Okay, but I don't care about Norwegians. So. Okay. Thanks again, Al. Members in the news, we have 2 hits from one person this month. That's Andrea Giron. First up, she got a Reader's Digest insert with 2 of her sunset scenes. An eclipse at dusk and the sky is the limit. So well done, Andrea. And then the second, being the back cover of the RASC's own journal for this month, is her eclipse sequence from November 19 last year. So I'm not sure that Andrea is on tonight. I know she's a busy lawyer, but well done. Next, please. Over to Dave Chisholm for the update on March skies for Ottawa. Thank you.
Well, good evening, folks. So, Chris, I'll get you to move to the next slide. So here are the moon phases for the month. And we've got, of course, the switch to daylight savings time. I'm hoping that when they finally decide not to move the clocks back and forth, that they standardize on standard time so that we can start our astronomy a little bit earlier in the evening. I'm not holding my breath on that one, though. Full moon is on the 18th, and this full moon was known by our indigenous folks as the worm moon, because it's the time of year when the ground would begin to soften. It's not very soft here in Ottawa, that's for sure, and the earthworms would reappear. The moon's also been known as the crow moon, the crust moon, and the sap moon, and the Lenten moon. Next slide, please. Here is the sunrise, sunset. So you can see there's a significant jump there. That's mostly due to the time change. So obviously the days are getting much longer. Mercury is not really visible this month at all. Venus is visible before sunrise, as is Mars. Jupiter is not visible. It's rising and setting with the sun all month. Saturn is visible before sunrise the second half of the month. It's really close to the sun right now. Uranus is visible all evening, and Neptune again is rising and setting with the sun. And here is our cartoon of the month. Good dad joke there.
Thank you, Dave, for that groaner. Chris, can we get the spotlight away from him now that he's done his damage? Okay, so our in-house presentation for this evening, Paul Klauninger, is going to be pointing out highlights during Orion's descent. Over to you, Paul.
Thank you, Mick. How's my volume doing?
It's fine. It's good.
Super. Okay. I've turned off my video so that I don't start breaking up on you guys there. And you can run the first slide whenever you're ready. There we go. Okay. Well, I'm sure that there are numerous Christmas astronomy presents within our realm of listeners tonight out there just waiting for a good workout. Unfortunately, January and February have been a little bit cold since Christmas. Most of the clear nights that we've had have also been in the -20 to -25 range, which doesn't really make for an optimum condition for sitting around or standing around and looking through a telescope. So fear not, there are warmer nights ahead, but it's unfortunate that the nights have been that cold since Christmas, especially for those that got telescopes and other paraphernalia, because really one of the most spectacular constellations visible anywhere in the world really is Orion. And Orion usually puts on some of its best shows during those months when it's nice and high in the sky and it's reasonably early. However, the start of spring is only about 3 weeks away and warmer nights are ahead. And so what I thought was with the challenge objects, the challenge objects that we had last month, I was going to show those. But I thought maybe I could expand on this because we have a window of opportunity on Orion still for the, as I'll show you the dates at the end of the presentation here, but suffice to say for the next few nights and then again towards the end of March. And hopefully by the end of March, we will be into some warmer nights. And it's a shame to let Orion set on us, especially for that new gear that I know that some of you have for a fact from talking to some of you. It would be a shame to have to wait until next autumn to give old Orion a crack there. So what I thought I'd do is just have a look around the Orion region and give you a sort of a short tour de force of some of the objects in Orion and the near vicinity, because we do have that window and there are some very spectacular objects in this part of the sky. So there's Orion descending. That's the name of the presentation. He is descending. He is rapidly heading towards the western sky, and as I said, he won't be. Once he goes under there at sort of around April or so, we won't see him again until the late autumn. So the next slide, please. So this slide just shows a star map plotted of the Orion region, similar to the photograph that I just showed you. And if you can show the next one there, Chris, if I take that star program and ask it to generate a list of interesting objects, Messiers and bright NGC objects, you can see that there's quite a few objects hiding amongst the stars there. So what I'll do tonight is I'll just have a look at a few of these. We won't have time for all of them, obviously, because Mick will put the electronic hook on me for sure. So I will try to keep to my timelines. Anyway, we'll have a look at some of those and take it from there. And the thing that I want to mention is that the nice thing about Orion is that not only does it contain a wealth of objects, but it's got something for everyone. Whether you're a visual observer using just binoculars or a telescope, or whether you're into photography and doing imaging with wide field lenses or telescopes, whether you're a novice or a beginner in either visual or photographic astronomy, Orion has something to offer everybody. So it's a real treat, and so we'll start our tour in around the area first. I'll go around the objects that sort of straddle around Orion, and then we'll have a look at Orion itself. So the next one, please. Yeah, we'll have a look at Sirius. I'll go clockwise up from Sirius and then up through the Rosette and the Cone Nebula. Have a look at some of these interesting objects, and then we'll have a look at the objects within Orion. So the next one, please. So this is Sirius, and this is a seriously overexposed shot of Sirius that I took many years ago, actually, but I still kind of like it. There is a simple image that I took with just a 4.5-inch reflector and a Malin Cam Jr. many years ago. It's a very short exposure, but I wanted to show this because if you've never seen Sirius through a telescope, it's or any kind of optical aid, it's a real treat. It's a sparkling diamond up there, and it just blasts out from amongst the stars that surround it. Next to our sun, it's the brightest star seen from Earth, and it's also one of the closest to us. It's only about 8.6 light years away. Sirius is about twice as massive as the sun, and it has an absolute visual magnitude of plus 1.4. It's 25 times as luminous as our sun, so it's a very, very bright star. And just, as I say, even a small telescope or a good pair of binoculars, it's very striking to look at. Sirius itself has a small companion called Sirius B. And the system, the two stars are actually only between 200 and 300 million years old. The system was originally composed of two bright bluish stars such as this, and the more massive was the one that you can't see now, was Sirius B. But it's consumed all of its resources and became a red giant before shedding its outer layers and collapsing into its current state as a white dwarf, orbiting in a tight orbit around the now primary Sirius A that you see. And that happened only about 120 million years ago. It's a short-lived star. All right, next one, please, Chris. So moving along our circle, this is the Rosette Nebula. Again, this is a star-forming region. It's about 5,200 light years away and has a radius of about 65 light years. With the Rosette, it's easy to see the star cluster that's at the center of it. Those stars they were actually formed within that nebula and have basically hollowed it out. The radiation from those intense blue stars has basically blasted out a cavity from within the Rosette. As I say, it's 65 light years across, and you can see the bright stars, but the actual nebula itself, it needs a good dark sky, and a nebular filter would really help to bring in this star forming H2 region. All right, the next one up. This is the Cone Nebula. and the Christmas tree cluster. This is a very nice object photographically. It's a little tricky to see the cone again visually. It is possible. Again, dark skies and a nebular filter help. The cluster itself, the bright stars, you can see the sort of the arrow shape with its long base at the bluish region at the on the right-hand margin, culminating in the point of the Christmas tree up near the tip of the Cone Nebula. Those stars are relatively easy to spot even in a small telescope, provided you know exactly where to look. And again, this is a star-forming region. Those stars form from within that mass of gas. Next one up. So this is just north of Orion there. This is the Messier 35 cluster, and it's an open star cluster. I included this one because it's just a really interesting target, even through a relatively small telescope. The star cluster itself has dozens of fairly bright blue stars, and very nearby it, you can see that there's what may in some telescopes look like a small nebulosity, but if your telescope is of sufficient size, you'll resolve this, and it's actually another star cluster that's about 4 times farther away. M30 itself, the larger one on the left, is about 3,000 light years from here, and the smaller NGC 2158 is about 12,000 light years away. So just a nice object off the top of Orion. Next one. This is the Crab Nebula. I showed you this actually. I think it was last month. Yes, it was last month, and it's always been a favorite object of mine just because of what it is. What we're looking at is the remnants of a star that exploded 1,000 years ago. And in the year 1054, the explosion of that star was recorded by numerous cultures around the world. And bear in mind, that was 6 centuries before the development of the telescope. The Crab Nebula, the star that blew itself to pieces, was so bright, it was seen as a daytime star for weeks after its explosion. It was actually visible in the daytime sky. And for months afterwards, in the nighttime sky, as it slowly faded away. It was then, I guess, basically forgotten for a long time because there was nothing left to see, and the invention of the telescope was still 6 centuries away. But once we did get telescopes of sufficient size to resolve it, we turned our gaze to that part of the sky and discovered that this is the remnant of that exploded star. Just a phenomenal object there, and imaging with especially with H alpha filters really brings out some of the tendrils that are basically strings of material that were ejected from the explosion. At the center of this nebula, of this supernova remnant, is a pulsar, and it was actually, when first discovered, thought to be possibly an extraterrestrial signal because it was so regular and so rapid that we had never seen anything or measured anything or heard anything like that from the night sky. That pulsar is a neutron star, basically only about the size of a small city, and it's whirling around and flashing basically 30 times a second. So just an unbelievably massive but very small object doing a crazy whirly dance and basically strobing us with its light 30 times a second. Phenomenal object. Oh, you're pointing that out? Was that your cursor there, Chris? Or no? Okay. All right. Where are we? So moving on from the Crab Nebula, the next one, please. These are 2 really lovely objects, and even with no optical aid at all, they're just splendid objects. The next one, please, Chris. On the lower left, you'll see the Heidi star cluster, and on the upper right, the Pleiades star cluster. Now, the Hyades is the closest star cluster to us here on Earth. It's only about 150 light years away, and has a radius of about 10 light years. This is opposed to the Pleiades up at the top right, which is about 3 times farther away, about 410 light years distant. And it itself contains over 800 stars. Now this has long been touted as a test for optical acuity, because if you could see 7 stars with your naked eye, you were considered to have good vision. And that is possible to do, especially under a nice dark sky. A nice clear transparent sky is necessary for that. And as you'll see, there's a lot more than 7 stars in the 7 sisters. I'll show you that in a moment. But first, that yellow star in the Hyades is actually not part of the Hyades star cluster. It is a bright star, but it is definitely not a member of the Hyades. It's much closer. It's the star Aldebaran. And if I can get you to flick to the next one there, Chris. So Aldebaran's a cool star. Well, not really cool, but it's massive. It has a radius of about 31 million kilometers, so much larger than our own sun. And it's it's over 500 times more luminous than our sun. So it's really pumping it out, and it's about 65 light years away, or about a third of the distance to the Hyades star cluster. It just happens to look like it's part of the cluster because of its position in space aligned with that cluster from our point of view. All right, next one, please. So there's the Pleiades photographically. You can see there's much more than seven sisters there if you start counting. The cluster is believed to have over 800 members, and this a relatively young group of stars that form this cluster. They're only a few 100 million years old, and as stars go, that's fairly young. So they're still feeling each other's mutual gravitation as they orbit around the galaxy. But in time, they'll disperse and they'll go their own ways, just like kids from a family. Our sun was probably once at one point early in its life, probably a member of a similar cluster that has long since dispersed. All right, let me just grab my notes here. And the next one, please, Chris. So we'll have a look at those are the objects sort of around Orion that are of interest, and either visually and as I say photographically. Orion is the same. There's just a host of very cool things to look at. Even a pair of good binoculars under a dark sky will reveal some of these objects, and certainly a small telescope will get you pretty far as far as Orion goes. So we'll have a look at first Beetlejuice, which again, I like looking at stars through the telescope, just especially bright stars, because they really pop out from their surrounding stars and make quite an impression. And Beetlejuice is certainly a special star. It certainly caught our attention back in late 2019 when we saw that there were some significant variation in its brightness. Next one, please. So here's 2 images that I shot. These are taken actually with the same setup, about 2 years apart. You can see there's the same star field and all, but you can see that the magnitude of Beetlejuice had dropped significantly. In fact, it had dropped by over a full magnitude in its output, which is quite significant considering that this is a fairly massive star that we're talking about. I mean, it's the 10th brightest star in the sky, and it's a humongous star. I mean, compared to our sun, Beetlejuice has a radius of 617 million kilometers. That's crazy. That puts it out, near the realm of Jupiter, and it's 548 light years away. It's a super red giant, and for such a large object to undergo such a significant drop in magnitude, well, we know that Beetlejuice, its days are numbered. Let's put it that way. It's expected to probably go supernova some of the best estimates are within the next 100,000 years, which is really the blink of an eye in terms of the age of the star. It's ready to pop. And when we saw this sudden decrease in its magnitude 2 years ago, we thought, we were wondering if this was the beginning of the end for Beetlejuice, but it has come back in brightness. So we believe that these are, we do know that it is a variable star, and on analysis of its variation, we know that there are a couple of periods of variation in its brightness. And at that point, back in January of 2020, it appears as though a couple of the cycles of variation overlapped. So probably different mechanisms at play here with different periods of brightening and dimming, and a couple of these cycles, major cycles, overlapped, and gave us this very significant dimming of Beetlejuice. But have a look at Beetlejuice again. It's a real treat through a telescope, especially. Have a look now, just in case tomorrow it pops on us and you can't see it anymore. Well, you'll probably see it as a really bright star, but then it'll fade away. That may, in fact, have already happened, because Beetlejuice is 548 light years away. So if it popped off at any time within that 5 centuries, we won't know about it just yet. But the light of that explosion would be on its way. So interesting supposition with Beetlejuice, wondering when it'll go. All right, next one, please. All right, so as for Orion itself, I mean, I could do a really lengthy presentation on just some of the objects within Orion, but I see my time is already ticking, so I'm gonna speed through and just talk about the most significant ones that are easily seen or relatively easily imaged. The two largest objects within the constellation of Orion are really magnificent objects. I mean, they're vast streams of gas, basically emitting at the hydrogen alpha wavelength. Their Barnard's loop is the very large arc that you see going around basically Orion's belt on the left-hand side and encompassing his sword as well. Excuse me. And the Lambda Orionis Nebula, that's again is a massive region. Oops, sorry, hang on a second. Lambda Orionis, it's a star forming region, and it's believed to be about 1,400 light years distant from us, so about the same distance as the Orion Nebula. And it's a few hundred light years in diameter. So it's a vast region, but it's very, very faint. Like, you're not going to see this with a telescope or binoculars. This is really an object for long exposure astrophotography. Same with Barnard's loop. It really requires both of these targets really require H alpha filters and long duration exposures to pick them out. But once you do see them, they are quite striking when they appear in your photographs. All right, just close-up view of the next one here is just a close-up view of that Lambda Orionis nebula. You can see it's a very spherical-looking object, and has many stars embedded within it. It is still forming stars. All right, and the next one, please. So down at the foot of Orion, we had a look up near his head. Down near the foot, we have two objects here. One is, again, very easy with binoculars or even with your naked eye, but striking in a telescope. And the other one is a photographic object. So the Rigel is the star at Orion's foot there. And again, if you can advance that, Chris, please. This is. I love looking at this star. This is the 7th brightest star in the night sky, and it's certainly the brightest star in Orion. It's a blue supergiant, and it's about 860 light years from Earth. It's the brightest. It's actually what you're looking at here, especially on the left. This is the typical view that you'll see through a telescope, unless you're looking for something else, which I'll just get to in a moment here. It's again very bright with respect to the neighboring stars, so it looks like a sparkly diamond, and in reality, it's actually the brightest member of a 4-star system. What you're seeing here is what we call Rigel A. It's the main component here on the left. The diagram or the image on the right is a much shorter exposure, and what I was trying to do with this is actually capture the other components. Now you see on the right hand side that there's a small bluish looking star just off to the right hand margin. This is a fascinating system because that small blue dot is actually a triple star system from the main object, from the main bright Rigel A star. And you can see this with the telescope. If you've got, you get a nice stable night, and you can adjust your power accordingly to separate these. They're only separated by about just under 10 arc seconds, so not very large. For those of you that remember seeing Mars through a telescope at its last opposition, it was around 23 arc seconds. So the separation between those two is less than half the diameter of Mars as we saw it last time. So it does require a stable night, otherwise this seeing is just going to smear them all together. But that dot is like, it looks in the image like a single star. And it's a challenging target for telescopes, even like anything smaller than about 6 inches. But this dot is actually 3 stars orbiting very, very tightly together. It's that triple system, and orbits around the main star, Rigel A. In fact, they orbit around the center of a mass, but they orbit around each other in about 24,000 years. But the inner stars forming that faint looking star, the triple stars, they orbit each other about 10, the two closest about every 10 days. So they're extremely close together. And the outer star of the 3 orbits the inner pair about every 63 years. So not long for a star like that. Again, only the largest telescopes are able to split these photographically. But it's just an interesting group to see there. So if you can train your telescopes on that and check out the group of stars looking as one orbiting the main star. Fascinating object. All right, next one, please, Chris. This one, I love this one. This is definitely a photographic target. This is the Witchhead Nebula. Definitely a photographic target. It's very, very faint, and it needs some good exposures through a sensitive camera and a telescope to bring this out. Actually, I shot this with a 300 millimeter lens, tracking it, and a series of long exposures. It's a reflection nebula. The blue nebulosity is actually light reflected from Rigel. It is very close. It's relatively close to Rigel, and it is just acting like a mirror, reflecting some of the blue light coming from that very, very bright star. Well, okay, next one, please. All right, so I saved this to the last. This is the heart of Orion, and what everybody looks for when they look up at the constellation of Orion. You can see that the 3 belt stars of Orion up near the top there are glowing very brightly. And if I can get you to toss up the next one there, Chris. Those are the 2 regions we're going to look at. At the top, we have the Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula. At the bottom, you knew I wouldn't leave this one out. It's the Great Nebula of Orion, Messier 42. So next one, please, Chris. So up near the Horsehead, that bright star that you see just off to the left of center up near the top, that's the leftmost star in the Orion's belt. It's all intact, and it swamps all the other stars with its brightness. You can see in the frame just below it is the expansive Flame Nebula. That object is relatively easy to see with a telescope, especially compared to the other object of interest here, which is the Horsehead. The Horsehead can be seen with a telescope under really good skies. In fact, I think Taras, I don't know if you're here tonight, Taras, but I think he mentioned that he was actually looking for this out at FLO with the Star Master, and I believe he found it visually there. But it is challenging, and an appropriate nebular filter can help with that. So next one, please. So there's a bit of a close-up on the Flame Nebula. Again, star-forming region. You can see that there's a lot of dust, very dense dust, blocking some of the light coming from that, and active star forming going on within that region. Again, this is a target that can be seen relatively easily with a telescope. And the next one shows a bit of a close-up on the Horsehead. Just because I love that object. It so suits its name. All right, next one, please. So the last ones I'm going to show you are of the Great Nebula itself. This is just a spectacular object. When I do my astronomy course, teaching my astronomy course up in Pembroke at Algonquin, I always make a point of letting the students see this through the 12-inch telescope that I have. That I bring out to the field, much as the presentation that we saw earlier tonight. It's the same basic telescope, and Orion is pretty spectacular through that telescope. It must be even better from a location where it lets you see it overhead. But it's a spectacular thing to look at. Even a pair of binoculars will let you see that this is not a star. It looks like a nebulous fuzzy star. And just a striking object. And last month's challenge objects, we had two of the objects were right in this what we're looking at here. The Running Man Nebula down at the bottom left, and the trapezium, which I'll show you in a moment there. So the Running Man, if I can get you to show the next one there, Chris. Yeah, that one, and flick to the next one. Get a close-up, but you can see why it's called the Running Man. The dark lanes of dust running through the blue reflection nebulas certainly do, in this orientation, have the appearance of a man running. So the Running Man Nebula, and obviously being illuminated by some very, very bright hot blue stars. Next one, please. So this is the Orion Nebula, and we're going to have a close look at the core of this for the trapezium objects. So the next one, please, zooms in on that square. This actually is an image. It's a single image there. I had to show this one as I was going through my. Oops, we lost it there. As I was going through my archives assembling this presentation. I remember this one. This is a test image that I took when we were still hoping to put the 16-inch smart scope online up at Shirley's Bay there. It was one of the test images that we took one night after we successfully debugged the thing for several months. To be shut down by the ministry and stuff as it went on. Anyway, long story short, we don't need that one. But that scope provided a very nice view of the heart of the Orion Nebula, and the trapezium is that very bright cluster of stars that you see in the middle. It's yeah, there we go. Thank you. So a 5-inch scope will resolve these stars, and this is a very tight group of very young stars. Its estimated age of these stars only about 300,000 years. And if we can go to the last one that I've got, this is one I took through just recently. Actually, it's just a single image. I haven't had a chance to process this yet. But I took this just recently. It's again a test image that I took with the new camera that I've been talking about, the ASI 294 on the 10-inch. Or on the 11-inch Celestron Edge HD. And again, you can see the trapezium right at the center. And oops, there we go. It's just a beautiful beautiful object there. You can you can see that I really have to dim down the surrounding nebulosity because the trapezium is very, very bright, and a lot of telescopic images they get blown out around the trapezium, and you lose a lot of the detail there. But if you play with image processing there, you can show the extent of the nebula around the trapezium as well. It's a very, very active region. I mean, this, the Orion Nebula is believed to have over 2,000 stars that have formed in it, and it's only about 3 million years old. So there's the trapezium and its immediate surroundings. The nebula itself, the Orion Nebula, the greater one that I showed you in the floor view itself, is about 1,350 light years distance and about 24 light years across. So that's it for Orion. And if I can get you to throw up the last slide there, Chris. So I hope I've given you, or sort of at least whetted your appetite for some observations of Orion while the getting's good, because in our part of the world, that's not for much longer. In fact, from tonight and for the next couple of nights, Orion, if we had some clear skies, Orion is still visible. Transits around 7:30 in the evening, and it begins to set as in this image here, basically with Rigel starting to get down near the horizon at around midnight. And after the 6th of March, the moon is in the picture, and it will start to interfere thereafter, especially with some of the fainter targets that I've shown you. Certainly some of the bright stars and the star clusters you can see all through the month of March. But for some of the fainter nebulosities, that window from tonight and the next couple of nights, and then as you can see on the right hand side, from March 20th to April the 4th. So we have about a 2-week window where the moon is out of the picture. Hopefully the nights will be much warmer than they are now, or at least tolerable. And the moon won't interfere with us and faint nebulosities in that interval. It does interfere thereafter. And after it goes away again, Orion will be down below the horizon and not visible again until later in the fall. So if you want to crack out that Christmas astro gear that you got and have a look at some very cool targets, Orion's the way to go. Wish you all clear skies. Stay well, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Paul, and some excellent detail there. Much appreciated. I especially like the challenge for getting to the other components of Rigel. See if anyone responds to that. So now, Chris, please, can you run through and highlight and spotlight the people for the observation reports?
Hey, thank you, Mick. We'll move first to Bob Olson.
How do you do, folks? This is a picture of Paul's area, the Orion Nebula, and it's a star trail image. It's 100 minutes long, but I did not open the lens for 100 minutes. It is actually 230-second exposures. I took this because I'm in Florida now, and everything is very high in the sky, including Orion. And I don't have a tracking mount, so I decided to just bite the bullet and take an untracked photograph. One of the things about this is that the 200 shots were loaded into layers in Photoshop, and then I used the lighten blending mode, and then you get this kind of an image coming out of it. This is basically unprocessed as far as like brightness and dimness. The nice thing about that is it allows you to remove airplane tracks, and in Orlando, there's lots of airplane tracks. Oh, by the way, I was observing this at about 25 degrees in the middle of the night. Next picture, please. I have a terrible time when I look at star trails to see what I'm looking at. And you can see there's the 3 Orion's belt, Sirius and Rigel going across. And next image, Chris. Yeah, Orlando is at about 28 degrees latitude, and I've drawn in where the Ottawa horizon is. And you can see that the Canopus, which is the bottom star, isn't visible from Ottawa at all. It's strictly a southern target. Anyway, very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. We look forward to seeing you back in Ottawa next month.
Yeah, leave on Monday.
And move on to Richard Taylor, our treasurer.
Okay, so you've already seen pictures of these things already, but it was the challenge object for this month was the Running Man. And so I tried using some longer exposures than I usually do. When I take pictures of the Orion Nebula, especially from Ottawa here, I usually don't go anything beyond 30 seconds because then the sky glow overwhelms everything. But the Running Man never shows up very clearly on those pictures. So I tried a longer exposure of 60 seconds. And yes, it was completely overwhelmed by light pollution. But by stacking up, how many did I get here? 41 60-second pictures. I managed to pull some data out of this with a lot of post-processing. Next one, please. And then while I was in the neighborhood, I thought I'd try another challenge object, the trapezium. And this one, of course, is at the other end of the brightness scale. It's too bright and usually gets completely washed out when you're taking a picture of the nebula. So what I tried this time was using some of the planetary techniques that I've been learning to capture this very tiny little cluster. So I took a 3-minute video at 1 millisecond exposures, and then put them through PIPP and auto stackert, and threw away most of the frames, only took the best 20% so that any of bad seeing would be avoided. And there I see it. There's the trapezium with just a little hint of the nebulosity. I was quite surprised that I even got any nebulosity at all at 1 millisecond. But that's how bright the core of the Orion Nebula is. So both of those were taken from my driveway here in Ottawa, Bortle 8, 9, something like that. Next one, please. And then we managed to get out of town for a few days, about a week ago now, to Barry's Bay. And we were in some really lovely dark skies. But the problem here was that it was really cold, minus 20 something, and there were trees all around. So I only managed a fairly short period of time when Orion was visible between a pair of trees. But here's my Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula off to the left. And I think it's one of the better ones that I've managed to do. I could still hope to get more data on this because it turns out that my tracking mount, the grease kind of gets a little bit sticky when it gets that cold. So I had to throw away a lot of these pictures as well. So this is a stack of 44 1-minute exposures. Next one, please. And then after Orion disappeared in the trees, I turned the telescope the other way around and pointed off to Ursa Major. And here's M101. Lovely spiral galaxy, a lot of beautiful star-forming regions in the arms there. And this is a 48 exposures. I was hoping for more, but as I say, it was a cold night and the battery on my laptop died. So here's the problems of Ottawa. So all of these pictures were taken with my ASI 178MC camera on a Williams Optics Z73 refractor with a Star Adventurer mount. That's all for me, thanks.
Great, thanks so much, Richard. And I know that Susie and Chu are still with us and they're laughing at your problems in the cold weather.
I'm sure. I also had to stomp around on the snow to make a flat patch to put my telescope on.
And next we'll move to Jim and Sophia.
Oh, thank you. So this is M82, known as the Cigar Galaxy. It's the closest starburst galaxy to Earth, approximately 12 million light years away in the constellation Ursa Major. It's called a starburst galaxy because of its very high rate of star formation. M82 is about 5 times more luminous than the Milky Way, and its central region is 100 times more luminous. You can see some of the luminosity in this core image. Some other images that I've seen by RASC presenters really show more dramatically how the core of M82 presents itself. In 2014, scientists discovered the brightest pulsar yet known in the core of M82, designated as M82X-2. This pulsar is believed to radiate energy equivalent to 10 million suns. This is a stack of 8 7-second exposures taken with the Mallancam Skyraider camera on an 8-inch Celestron Smith-Cassegrain telescope using the astronomic UHC filter. Next one, please. And this is NGC 7380, the Wizard Nebula, which is an emission nebula in the constellation Cepheus. This is an interplay of stars, gas, and dust, spanning approximately 100 light years. The Wizard Nebula is 7,200 light years from Earth, and this image was taken with the Mallancam Skyraider camera, model number DS10C Tech, and this is a live stack of 15 20-second exposures, totaling 5 consecutive minutes of average stacking. The image was post-processed using Topaz Studio 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for being such a regular contributor to this this segment.
My pleasure.
And last, we'll move to Oscar, who we haven't seen present for a while, which is great to see.
Hey, everyone. So Jim stole my thunder there on all the details on M82, so I won't reiterate all of that, but maybe I'll focus a little bit on some of the technical aspects of the image. So again, this is an image of Messier 82. So I took this image last week in minus 19 degree weather. Some of my equipment wasn't very happy. In any event, it's a 2 hour and 10-minute exposure comprised of, 26 5-minute sub-exposures. It was taken through a Celestron 8-inch Edge HD using a ZWO ASI 533 MC Pro camera. So actually, I really enjoyed doing this image. I was quite surprised that I managed to get some of those little hydrogen alpha tendrils coming up off of the the poles of the galaxy there. So I was pretty pleased with that. And yeah, that's about it. Hoping to make a more regular appearance in this segment, but we'll see.
Thanks, Oscar. And while you're still here with us and spotlighted, it's a great chance to remind those who don't remember that the next segment here are the observing challenges that so many of you depend on every month and drives your observing programs, are thanks to the great work of Oscar, who sets out each month to find the appropriate images in the sky to challenge you. And I know a few people may curse you, Oscar, but I know deep down that when they curse you, they're complimenting you and thanking you for challenging them. And would you like to present your challenges for the next month?
I'll let Mick go ahead and do that.
Okay, we'll move back to Mick. Thanks again, Oscar.
Thank you to Oscar. Thank you to all the observers. And I'm going to put my standard plea out there. Oscar, you this month get an elephant stamp, because with your image, you provided some background and technical detail on acquisition. Jim Sophia, he's already got an elephant stamp and a gold star because he provides those data every time he presents. What I'm asking to all the images is, please, when I put this stuff up on the website, having some text explaining context is really, really helpful to future users. yes, I can link to the video presentation, but like I say, a bit of text with the images will earn you your own elephant stamp. Thank you. So moving on, last month's challenges, NGC 1977, the trapezium, as we've seen, NGC 2295, and nobody apparently responded to the lunar challenge about Rupes Altae. So that's still standing, I guess. Next, Chris. So our beginner challenge for the month, or Oscars beginners challenge for the month, is an open cluster in Cancer, NGC 67, 6th magnitude, so a reasonably easy catch with a 30-minute apparent size. Next, please. Intermediate challenge is Messier 105, which is the first of a couple of targets in Leo, an elliptical galaxy, and the largest in Messier's catalogue, 10th magnitude, a reasonable size at 5 by 4 minutes-ish. Moving on. The Advanced Challenge in NGC 3444, a spiral, also in Leo, 15th magnitude, so this is looking for dark skies and large aperture, and quite small, and that's my daughter calling, so I will just put that away. And next, please. Finally, the Lunar Challenge is Crater Janssen, an impact crater in the north part of Mare Tranquillitatis, 600 meters deep, 24 kilometers in diameter. Next, please. That's the summary. Next, please. So Fred Lossing Observatory is pretty much back in business. Most restrictions have been lifted. The recommendation really only requires masks to be worn when inside the clubhouse, the warm room. So usual arrangements, check with Rick for details on availability and access, snow clearing, and so on. Next, please. FLO star parties are members-only events. Yes, you can bring guests, but basically it's a facility for Ottawa members. Next party on tomorrow.
Sorry.
That's okay. Next party is scheduled for tomorrow. The usual club information, FLO director Rick Scholes, Estelle and Darren don't have so much to do at the moment with the libraries. We don't need copy and conversation, but we should have it. Membership information from Art Fraser and the subsidized magazine renewals, Sky and Telescope and Astronomy. Stuart Glenn, don't forget you get Sky News as part of your membership. Next, please. And apparently our audience tonight was
I saw a maximum
XXX.
of 80 people, but the way we're doing our shows these days, I'm not able to edit the slide on the fly. So sorry for the X's, but approximately 80 people at a max, which means we're probably had upwards of 90 unique people.
Okay. Just to point out, in Queensland, Australia, they have a beer called 4X, and you might wonder why it's called 4X. And the story is that Queenslanders don't know how to spell beer. Okay, moving along. So next meeting, April Fool's Day. No, I won't do anything silly. Anything to do with observations, submissions, and so on, please to me at meetingchair@ottawa.rasc.ca. And again, huge thanks to everyone who've contributed. I understand that Susie and Shu are still online, so therefore they are crazy people.
Actually,
but then they're astronomers.
They just had to leave, but thanked us.
Okay. So thank you all for attending. See you next month. Ciao.